The Ford F-150 is the most popular truck in America, but we can honestly tell you that this model is not without issues. From unexpected maintenance costs to common mechanical problems, some problems can catch owners off guard and make you spend a lot. Whether you're thinking about buying an F-150 or already own it, being aware of these problems can save you time and money. So stay with us as we break down the 8 problems with the Ford F-150 you must know. Number 8. 3.5-liter V6 death rattle. Let's start with one of the biggest issues of the 3.5-liter V6 engine, namely the death rattle. The 3.5-liter V6 engine is not one of the latest designs to be released. However, when it was released, it had some fair share of issues. Specifically, the death rattle is a common problem on these early engines. This rattling noise appears on startup and feels like the engine is falling apart from the inside. But this problem is not a very serious issue overall. The root cause of the problem are the cam phasers. These sprockets are located on each of the camshafts. In total, there are 4 cam phasers. What these components do is control the variable valve timing of the engine. Why these cam phasers fail is unknown, probably an engineering fault. What's good is the fact that this problem cannot cause a major engine failure. The phasers might rattle, but that's all they can do. However, replacing them is not easy. The whole front end on the engine has to come off, including the timing chain. This is why if you notice a death rattle on your F-150, it's a good idea to replace the timing chain and water pump in the process. This way, you'll save a lot of money in the process. Number 7. Intake valve failure. The second problem that we must cover when it comes to the Ford F-150 is the intake valve failure. So what is an intake valve, and why does this problem occur? An intake valve is a component mounted on the cylinder head. On each cylinder, you have 2 intake and 2 exhaust valves. The intake valve lets fresh air into the cylinder, while the exhaust valves open and collect the exhaust gases. These valves open and close extremely fast for each cycle. What happens on some Ford engines used in the F-150 is intake valve failure. The engine simply drops a valve into the cylinder, and the engine fails immediately. The engine will get irreparable damage that will turn into scrap metal. The engines that were affected by this problem were the 2.7-liter and the 3.0-liter EcoBoost used in the F-150, with 2021 and 2022 being the affected models. There was a recall done by Ford on this specific problem, with many of the owners receiving a brand new engine with 0 miles on it. This is why if you intend to purchase a Ford F-150 with one of these 2 engines, you need to make sure that the engine was recalled. If not, you should recall the model as soon as possible. You just don't want to have an engine failure while you drive on the highway. Number 6. Oil pan gasket leaks. Another very common engine problem with the 2.7-liter EcoBoost engines that we must note is the oil pan gasket leaks. This is a common problem on the 2015 to 2017 2.7-liter EcoBoost engines, mainly due to the fact that Ford started to use plastic oil pans for the first time. These oil pans are plastic, and instead of using normal gaskets, Ford started to use RTV to seal these pans. So the RTV started to show its age much sooner than expected. So oil started to leak from the seals and allow the engine to lose some serious amounts of engine oil in the process. This oil loss, if not detected in time, could lead to a situation known as oil starvation, a case when the engine is left without engine oil and engine failure occurs. So if you have a 2.7-liter EcoBoost engine in the F-150, specifically the 2015 to 2017 model, you should make sure that the pan and RTV sealer were replaced. There's a service recall specifically targeting this issue with the F-150. What's interesting in the recall was the fact that Ford also requested that the valve covers were also replaced on some of the models. These are also plastic components that can fail just like the oil pan. So if you have a model produced between 2015 and 2017, make sure that it was recalled. This way, you can sleep without worries. Number 5. Carbon buildup. Now let's cover another major headache of the EcoBoost engine, and that is the carbon buildup that occurs in the intake valves. So what is carbon buildup, and why is it a problem with these engines? Well, carbon buildup is a normal thing on engines. They burn fuel and create carbon. However, these modern engines that use direct injection are creating excessive amounts of carbon. Namely, This is the case because fuel is injected through special injectors that sit on top of the cylinder instead of using the intake ports like in older engines that use port injection. This method of injection does not allow the valves to be washed by fuel as in older engine designs. So consequently, oil vapors start to build up and stick to the valves, specifically on the valve stem. This often results in obstruction and poor valve operation. This situation leads to engine misfires and check engine light. The way to solve this problem is by using a method known as walnut blasting. This method uses walnut shells that are blasted in the intake ports. This method might cost you a good penny, but it's the only way to solve this problem that these modern engines create. What's good about this issue is that it does not happen frequently. It takes 70,000 miles for these layers of carbon to accumulate on the intake ports. Number 4. Spark plug and coil failure. A problem that we also must note is the fact that the F-150 with the EcoBoost engines has significantly more ignition-related issues over its predecessors. The problem is also attributed to the direct injection system used in these engines. The ignition components need to work extremely hard in order to run the engine, so consequently, they start to fail. What's worse is the fact that this problem is the main trigger for the infamous check engine light. Whenever you have an engine that is misfiring, it'll trigger the check engine light, and this problem needs to be diagnosed with a code reader. Then, the next step will involve replacing the spark plugs and affected coils with new components. Spark plugs are extremely cheap, while coils can be more expensive, and this is why we advise that you only replace the faulty coils and not all of them at once. This way, you'll save a few bucks. Then, once you replace the components, you need to clear the codes and make sure that they are erased. For those who are into DIY, this can be a pretty good project for the weekend. Number 3. 10-speed transmission rough shifting. Another problem with the F-150 is its infamous 10-speed transmission, which this model uses. The model started to use a 10-speed automatic that had more speeds but also more problems. However, these problems are not of mechanical nature. Specifically, the 10-speed has problems of a software nature. This transmission depends a lot on the software, and this causes problems, namely rough shifting. Because of this problem, the F-150 was recalled and its software was recalibrated. But still, even after all these years, the model still has problems with the transmission, especially newer vehicles. The transmission has to go into something known as a learning phase. The transmission has to learn in order to operate well in the future. This can take 1,000 miles or more in some instances. So if you purchased a brand new model, you should not panic too much because this is a completely normal situation with this truck. Number 2. Rear view camera glitches. A problem that we must note with the Ford F-150 connected to the models equipped with the rear view camera is the frequent glitches that the owners experience. The computer that powers these systems is not something special, and it constantly freezes out and causes the rear view camera to glitch. Also, the camera itself can fail and show widescreen. Reportedly, there were 600,000 vehicles recalled because of this problem. Also, the infotainment system, especially in older F-150 models, is prone to glitching and causing issues. The solution to this problem is to restart the engine, and the system will restart automatically. This can be frustrating, but this is a common occurrence in these models. Number 1. Door latch failures. The last problem on our list is the door latch failure. This problem occurs in the 2015 to 2017 model years of the F-150. The door latches on these models are prone to break frequently and require replacements. A new latch is not something very expensive, but the thing that makes it expensive is the fact that you have to paint it in body color. So this could increase the price of the repair significantly. This is why we recommend that you inspect the door latches and make sure the doors open and close correctly in order to avoid this expensive problem occurring on your F-150 model.